Guys, our friends at Ridge have done it again. After creating the world's greatest wallet, they have now launched the Ridge key case. You no longer have to be bulked down by your old jangling keychain. You got to try it out for yourself. Click on the link in the description below. Use the promo code Chael. That's going to get you 10% off. And look how good it goes with my Ridge wallet. The Ridge key case secures between 2 and 6 keys. It organizes your keys in a compact silhouette and folds out for easy access. There are 6 colors and styles, including carbon fiber and my favorite, burnt titanium. The Ridge team is so confident that you like it, they're going to let you test drive it for 45 days. If you don't love it, send it back, get a full refund. Go to ridge.com/Chael to save 10% today, or just click on the link below. Islam versus Charles. Guys, what's next? I can't remember a massive fight like this where that discussion wasn't out there and somewhat clear even. Somewhat clear. Now, we've always got 2 or 3 guys. We've always got 2, 3 guys rotating. They're all kind of fighting and bickering it out. And that's where we weigh in. That's what that's about. That becomes a popularity contest. I mean, these guys that are fighting for the next opportunity become candidates. They're nothing more than political candidates, and then we go and vote. And generally, we then get our way. A lot of power. A lot of power with sharing your opinion, particularly in the sport of MMA. Now, I don't feel as though we're doing that here. Why? Islam versus Charles is finally here. This fight feels like we've waited all year for it. That isn't the case. This fight was announced just as far back as any other fight is announced, but we would have pay-per-views coming up. We would have pay-per-views in front of this one. We're still talking about this one. This has been stealing the headlines. Like, this match needs to go, and we're all thrilled for it. Now, insert Volkanovski. Where do you want to put him? Volkanovski, at a minimum, is put exactly where we've asked and where we believe that he should be, which is the backup fighter in case. Now, I do want to remind you, in case of what has never been responded to. And I don't know that it will. It will be an absolute game time decision. I just want to remind you guys, we have created the narrative that if Oliveira or Islam misses weight, Volk goes in. We created that. And I just want to remind you, in case this ever gets tested, the reason you have a backup fighter is not in case one guy misses weight. The reason you have a backup fighter is to preserve that main event. Even if you can only bring one half, the red corner or the blue corner, Islam or Charles in this case, you're preserving that match, that time fill, that sponsored and that featured bout. That's what you're trying to do. So before you think we just turn to Volkanovski, because if we can still have that match, if we can still satisfy that time buy, that placement on the card, those sponsorships, if we can still do that, we might just do that. We don't necessarily have to bring Volk in. I don't know that this is something that's going to be tested. I just want to remind you, if you have 2 athletes and 2 bodies and a commission that's saying yes and athletes that are saying yes, there is a reasonable belief that we're going to go through with that, regardless of what the scale says. And I just want to remind you, the backup fighter is for when you lose a fight. When one of the guys can't go out there or the commission steps in and they've changed their mind based on new information they're given. If none of those things happen, we're not guaranteed that we ever turn to the backup fighter in the first place. But hold the thought. Dana White doing something with Barstool Sport. And they asked him about Volkanovski. Hey, Volk's going up. Hey, Volk's the backup fighter. Will Volk's next match, regardless if it's at 280 or not this Saturday, will his next match be for the lightweight title? And Dana used very interesting words, and what Dana said is that makes sense. Now, that's not a yes or no, but it's a jumping off point. I think that we all agree if Volk can go into this spot, if Volk is good enough to fight one of these guys when you need him, then he should be good enough to fight him when it all comes together naturally. I think that we agree with that. But it's also not a hard yes. And as I look around 155, I don't see anybody interjecting themselves. I must give credit to Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler will do whatever it takes to get that world title opportunity. Michael Chandler is one of the few guys that called out Islam Makhachev, just so you guys remember. The guy that nobody's ever called out ever. You can't say that anymore because Chandler did call him out. Chandler wants to fight for the title. Now he's got a huge fight He's going to the media mecca. He's taking on a former champion in Dustin Poirier. I mean, right, like a lot of boxes get checked there. But is that being looked at and being discussed as a number one contenders match? And it strikes me as a bit of a surprise. Because, see, you have to know the order, right? When you're sitting down at a strategy session, you have to find out the order and the planned order before you can come in and disrupt it. If your entire plan is to get in front of a guy, whether you got to go head-to-head with him or you got to bury him in the media, whatever it is that you have to do, before you can disrupt it, you have to at least know what the order is. I don't think that it's clear at 155. And look, guys, isn't there a scenario? Like the idea of Volkanovski is a very live and real idea for me. I also feel that it's supported by facts of not what has happened, what hasn't happened. By example, Yair Rodriguez and Josh Emmett are yet to call out Volkanovski. Neither one of them has come out and really made a push. At one point, if you follow this sport really close and you're a smart mark, 3 and 4 days after Josh Emmett's last fight, which was an incredible contest, 3 and 4 days after Yair's last fight was an incredible outcome. 3 and 4 days after there was talk of fighting for a title, neither of them called out Volkanovski. That's true. I'm saying that before they see the piece and say, Chael, yes, I did. No, you didn't, guys. No, you didn't. You called for a title fight. Calling for a title fight is not the same thing as calling for Volkanovski, who happens to have the title. If you don't know why, let's back up and start class there another day. So the fact that that hasn't happened, there's no discussion, we're not moving in that direction. We don't have a date booked, we don't have a contract, we don't have anything signed, which is for sure going to kick us into next year. I think lends to the idea that Volk is being looked at for what Dana said, and that it does make a level of sense, and perhaps that is going to be the next fight. I want to know what you guys think about that. Because mythical odds came out, and there was a bit of a belief that Volk isn't big enough. Now, I hear that one all the time. Every time we've ever seen champ, every time we've ever seen that, and yes, there's one exception. Don't think you have to correct me and go back 20 years. I'm going to use a broad stroke statement, but every time we've ever seen champ, it is the smaller person moves up. And every time we have that built-in belief, he's too small. We say that over and over. And then history shows us that the guy from one weight class down is the biggest pain in the ass you're going to have. But then we forget about it. We think it was a one-off, even though it's not a one-off. It is far more common than not common that the advantage goes to the lighter guy. So right now we have this narrative that Volk is too small. Volk is not good enough. Volk doesn't really mean it. We heard all of these things. Those are gone. Volk's going to get on a scale, an official scale. It's going to say 155.0. Islam's going to get on that same scale, and Charles is going to get on that same scale. They're all going to weigh the same. They're all going to be 155.0. There is no argument if a guy isn't big enough. I'm just sharing for you, not to mention historically, there's not an advantage to that. So then what do you want to default to? You want to default to records? He's never lost. You want to default to titles? He's the world champion. In fact, he'll be the only world champion that gets on the scale that day. With those three. I'm just sharing for you everything that you've tried to use it as an excuse where you're representing yourself. You're saying, I wouldn't do it because I am not. I think you're learning that Volk doesn't think, and doesn't react the same way as the average guy. I think that Dana makes a good point. I think it does make sense. But in the world of competition, nobody's going to get grabbed and nobody's going to get an opportunity that they didn't ask for. I have to give credit to Michael Chandler. I can't dismiss him. Because anybody that asks, that's what he wants. And he doesn't want it handed to him. He's willing to do it the hard way. He's willing to get in there and fight and prove it. You have to give credit for that. And I think we will. I think we do. I think we have a real good eye on Chandler versus Poirier. But in the immediate and in the short term, to quote Dana White, will Volkanovski fight the winner of Islam versus Charles? It makes sense.